Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the Jaybefaunt Show. My name is James Fauntlower, your host. It is good to see all of you on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. Welcome. The Jaybefaunt Show, just to let you guys know, is available on all major podcast platforms like Anchor, Apple, Google, and Spotify podcasts, so you can subscribe to me there. I'm also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so if you would like to, you guys can see me on the Revolutionary Blackout Network on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm sorry. Yes, at Tuesdays. Sorry, Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for RBN Live, as well as on Thursdays at 6 p.m. for the Sabby and JB show. I also like to give a warm and gracious thank you to the patrons on Patreon as well as Coffee. Without you, I wouldn't have a show. So I definitely want to give my thank you out there to you guys as well. Hello to everybody that's watching on YouTube, Twitch, and Rockfin, and the rewatch also as well on Rumble. It is so good to see all of you, as well as everyone in the chat. I will give my salutations to everyone in the chat after the interview is over. In the meantime, I would like to introduce the uh, the candidate for state senate for Massachusetts, and we have Terence Cudney joining us here today. Terrence, so good to see you. Welcome to the JB Font Show.
Good to see you. Good to see you again. Yeah, I had a brief opportunity to speak with you on the third party
Mhm.
summit when I
Yeah,
think you were filling in for Savvy for a little bit.
yeah.
But
Mhm.
I'm glad to be able to have a chat with you individually. This is awesome.
And thank you so much for coming. One of the reasons why that I actually wanted to do this, and I started off, my first candidate was Delilah Barrios. She's running in the Green Party for governor of Texas. And so I wanted to give a lot more attention to third parties and independents that are anti capitalist, anti imperialist, who are running. Because one of the things that I've always talked about was the importance of not only giving you all the attention that you need and deserve, but also uh, I critique the larger channels for not giving third parties and independent candidates the attention. And so I wanted to be the example that I want to see. And so with that, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, as well as I think that trying to have people who are very sympathetic to anti-capitalism and anti-imperialism is deeply important, so that if something pops off, i.e., revolution, then there will be people who kind of know how the levers of government work, that can also give us a hand and also work in tandem with organizing, and as well as working in tandem with uh, uh, helping us to push for our material conditions from the outside front as well as the inside front. So
Amazing.
yeah,
That's awesome. I love it.
yeah, yeah. So one of the first questions that I have for you, Terrence, and I just want to make sure I ask this to every single person that runs, really is the question why? What was the main driver for you, and what made you decide to run for Massachusetts State Senate?
Yeah. So you want the long answer or the short answer? Yeah, I'll try and keep it as brief as I can. So
We got time, Terrence. We
we
got
got
time.
time. Yeah. So let's put it this way. So at it was 2018 when I was working for my third tech startup. I'd been in the sort of tech entrepreneurship space for a while,
Hmm.
and really gotten into like conversational artificial intelligence and
Mm.
um, a little bit of blockchain stuff as well. And basically, thought I was going to be in tech startups for the rest of my life, basically, or, in the tech world. But I'd also come from a background in international relations and linguistics, and this and that, right? And so as tech startups do, I don't know how familiar you are with that world, but the fact
Mhm.
is, they run out of money. That's a thing that happens, and then they try to raise the next round of funding, and they have to kind of figure out how things are going to go. And it just so happened I delivered a major sort of new product for them the month before. But they decided that that was the time to let me go to kind of consolidate the company and see if they could basically raise another round of funding and keep going. And so I took that. That was a really tough time, I'll be honest. Just to kind of feel like, oh, I'd done all this work, I'd put all this time and effort in, I delivered something real, and now I'm kind of out on my ass, frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it took some time, and I've struggled in the past with depression and anxiety, and so
Mm.
like getting back out there was hard.
Yeah.
I just recently, met my partner. What was it, 6 months, 7 months before I was laid off, and she helped me through a difficult time, and basically we made the difficult decision as monetary resources dried up, to go to a place that had a little bit better rent, frankly. And that was where she's from, which is Gloucester, which is on the North Shore of Massachusetts, if you're familiar at all with the geography there. And so we moved back to her hometown. We lived with her parents for a couple months while we found a winter rental. And suffice to say, I was still struggling to figure out what I was going to do. And I actually have some anecdotal evidence that because I'd grown sort of more politically engaged online over time,
Yeah.
that that speech was concerning to the sort of corporate kind of work that I was had been seeking work in, to kind of maintain a standard of living, right? And so I basically made the difficult choice to go back to waiting tables for the first time in 7 years. And I was sort of coaxed by my partner's father actually to join their restaurant. He kind of made it out as like I was helping them out, but really he was helping me kind of get back out there and start to make a living again. And then a couple months later, it was about a couple months later, COVID hit, right? And so I was converted from a wait staff to a delivery driver for the restaurant.
Wow. Okay.
And did that over the course of the pandemic until things started to open up again. And during that time, I was able to kind of rethink things. And to be honest, coming from this background in international relations, and I'd be happy to talk more about that. I'd always had a passion for policy, and then coming from the innovation world, I was interested in sort of applying that innovative mindset to politics. And I'd also started a little online project called the Decent Fed Project, short for Decent Federalism Project. The idea being to kind of look at the U.S. anew in terms of like different ways that we could format our government to make it run better, to make it more actually democratic for people. And so I had that sort of basis of knowledge and work and thinking through policy in an innovative way, and started to think maybe I should try running for office. And so I've come to love this community over the last 3+ years at this point, and thought I could be of service.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. One thing I noticed is that a lot of us, we all come from a deeply working class background. And so that's what the main driver is, because you know what it's like, to be through that struggle. And it sort of, it's like a temperament by fire, because you know what it's like. But at the same time, you have that empathetic feeling of, I know what it's like. I don't want other people to have to go through it. Right.
For sure, and I don't want to hide the ball. I mean, like I grew up in a family that provided for me well. I didn't have to worry about
Hmm.
student loans coming out of college. But when I struck out on my own,
Hmm.
what I like to say is, I crossed socioeconomic classes a couple of times, right? Like
Hmm.
I got a taste of like making a decent living. and then had it kind of taken away, and had to kind of go back and forth, and
Mhm.
here I am now. But yeah, I'd say, yeah, I definitely, I like to think of empathy as my superpower.
Mhm.
It sounds
Mhm.
probably a little cheesy to say, but
Mhm.
um, yeah, it's valuable to me, and it's what drives me forward. It's my guiding star, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that needs to be a hallmark of people, and also one thing that I notice about being in this space, and I think you can kind of apply it to also the political space as well,
Hmm.
is that being in touch with the people, and I'm not talking about just the affluent people in someone's district. I'm talking about
Hmm.
the people who are really down in the dumps because of the policies of either the city, municipality, state, or federally. And then you talk to them constantly and it keeps you grounded. I think
Absolutely.
that's something that's deeply important. I think a lot of times people end up running away from that because they get into a higher tax bracket. And
Hmm.
so, as goes your higher tax bracket, also goes your associations with certain types of people. And so, then once you start to leave, the more, the more poorer people behind, then your sense of urgency changes, right? And so, that's something that I've noticed and something that I'm trying to keep myself aware of. So, I think that's also really deeply important, especially for people who are running for office, to keep in touch. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but a couple days ago, I had Shama Sawant on
Hmm.
here, and she is the council member for the city of Seattle. And one of the things that a lot of people know about Shama Sawant is, even though the salary for her as city council is over $100,000 a year, she only takes what average um, the average salary is in Seattle of regular people, which is probably around 15, $16 an hour, and the rest she donates to a solidarity fund. So she's literally living exactly how we live, and so she knows what it's like. Now, I'm not saying that everybody has to do that, but what I mean is a keeping a more grounded approach, so that you're able to really identify with the ailments of our society today.
Yeah, Shama Sawant is, I mean, such a valuable asset to the working class of this
Hmm.
country.
Yeah.
And if I could be an ounce of the kind of figure that she is for the working class, I would be thrilled. She's great.
Yeah, yeah. So my next question that I wanted to get to, uh, and this is going, diving into policy. So, what are the top three policies would be your first priority to implement as state senator? If you could try to at least put those up for a vote in the state senate.
Yeah, so the easy one for me anyway is universal health care. We have
Hmm.
a state senate, sorry, a state initiative within our legislature for what we call mass care, which is essentially a single payer bill to
Hmm.
provide um, every citizen of Massachusetts with quality healthcare, and expanded to include dental, mental health care, vision, hearing,
Hmm.
reproductive care, uh,
Hmm.
you know basically you name it, prescription drugs,
Hmm.
make those not just accessible, but a reality for folks within the Commonwealth here. And I think that that's huge. And I'm also, an advocate for national improved Medicare for all. I'd love to see us have it across the country.
Hmm.
Um, I actually co-created a group called Medicare for All Everywhere with an organizer from the Seattle area. I don't know if you're familiar with Andre Stackhouse.
Hmm.
He's part of a whole Washington,
Hmm.
um, and basically we're working to build sort of solidarity across states. Joint organizing,
Mhm.
basically going where the energy is, and helping to build the energy, to get us across the finish line where everybody has it, and not just uh,
Mhm.
the few at this point, but not just any one state as well.
Yeah. Just to answer viewer Reality Revolution, you're running the Green Party, correct?
I'm running as an independent. I'm not affiliated with
Oh,
any
independent.
party.
Okay. Okay. Independent and no party. Okay. Thank you so much for that.
Sure.
So uh, what what other other policies that you're trying to implement as well? Because I know you
Yes,
said
I
healthcare.
could go on with healthcare for a
Yeah.
while, but
Yeah.
yeah, there are other ones. Yeah, for sure. So I'd love to see us do a lot more to combat climate change, to become a leader in the country for climate
Okay.
change. I feel like we're a participant in the climate change, economy
Mhm.
in terms of renewable energy and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
But I'd love to see us do more. There's a lot of opportunities here on the North Shore
Mhm.
for offshore wind and tidal energy.
Mhm.
It's important, I think, in our area because we rely heavily on the fishing industry and whale watching, so a little bit of tourism there. So I think it's important to do that in consultation with
Mhm.
those folks, to not make their lives harder if we can avoid it. But I think it is something that's vitally important to do.
Mhm.
I'd also love to see us build more resilient infrastructure. In particular, our roads. There's technology out there. I don't know if you've been, this side of the country, but the our roads are just terrible.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you have your share in your part of the country as well. Yeah.
I'm in
So
Florida.
right,
You know.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So right. The was the bridge collapse, or no, it was the was it an apartment building? What was the one
Yeah,
that?
that was down in Miami. Yeah.
Right. Okay, that was down in Miami. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes. So you know. So there's
Yeah.
there's technology for building more resilient infrastructure, in particular our roads, that I think we're not taking advantage of. There's technology for so-called self-healing roads, the
Mm.
kind of asphalt that has steel fibers running through it. And
Mhm.
basically, if you run like a current of heat over top of it, it expands the steel, which helps
Mhm.
to fill in the cracks in the roads as they form.
Mhm. Mhm.
So there's a lot of opportunity for us to,
Mhm.
basically build a pilot project in the
Mhm.
North Shore to go at that. So those are a couple. I'm happy to go into any number that you'd like.
Mhm. You were basically talking about infrastructure. One of just a question off the top of my head. What is your view on mass public transportation?
Yeah, so here on the North Shore, we have a commuter rail line that runs down into
Mhm.
Boston. A couple, actually. We have a couple different lines that run into Boston that are connected with the Massachusetts Bay Transit Authority, MBTA. And basically, it's really out of reach in terms of pricing for your average
Mhm.
Bay Stater, your working class Bay Stater in our area. So
Mhm.
I'd love to see us substantially reduce the cost of that.
Mhm.
I think moving in the direction. I don't know how familiar you are with Michelle Wu, the new mayor of Boston, but she's
Mhm.
been doing some solid work to make several lines free. I think the goal should absolutely be free public transit
Mhm.
throughout the MBTA system. Um, it's just a question of how we do it, but it's something that I very much like to see, and I think is really important for the purposes of building equity and economic justice in the Commonwealth.
Okay, thank you so much. And is there one more policy that you would try to implement?
Yeah, so I'd love to see us do a lot of fixing with our tax code in Massachusetts.
Okay.
So our tax system is basically really regressive, frankly. We don't
Mhm.
have a state marginal income tax, so as
Mhm.
a result, it's a flat income tax for regardless of your tax bracket at the federal level. Basically, I'd love to see
Mhm.
working class and poor families pay less on their income tax, and I'd love to see the rest on, basically the wealthy at the very least pay more. Same goes for small businesses. I'd love to see small businesses pay a little bit less in
Mhm.
taxes, and I'd love to see big businesses pay uh, at least their fair share, if not
Mhm.
significantly more.
Okay. All right. Okay. So my third question is, This one has to do with jobs. So, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, Massachusetts has a current unemployment rate of 4.6%. How would you respond to people who say that the rate of employment is already good? It can't get much better than this.
Geez, yeah. I mean, that's a very sort of common argument of your average. I hate
Mm-hmm.
to use the word, but of your average liberal, right?
Mm-hmm.
To basically, uh, come at this from the angle of, and they won't say this out loud, but what they're effectively saying is a little bit of misery for a couple people is totally
Mm.
fine with them, right?
Mm. Okay.
Um, and that's not remotely sufficient from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We should be, going for full employment.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody who can work should be able to make a full living wage,
Mm-hmm.
in their job, and basically, if they can't work, they should be more or less supported by the government. I think that's just
Mm-hmm.
sensible. We should, in the richest country in the world, is what everybody says. I think we're actually slipping into number two spot, either now or relatively soon.
Mm-hmm.
But we should be able to take care of our, what is it, 330 million folks in terms of that. And so for Massachusetts, we should be able to take care of our people in that way. Sounds like a bit of a generic answer as I say it out loud, but the fact is, I just think we have to do a lot better for people. And for yeah, if the question is 4.6%, oh, that should be fine with us. My answer is that's not remotely fine. That's not remotely okay. And I think that it's a quiet part, out loud kind of statement to be like, oh, we're okay with a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
misery, because that's what kind of keeps the system as we see it afloat, and
Mm-hmm.
that's totally
Mm-hmm.
unacceptable to me,
Yeah.
frankly.
And well, and one of the things that you actually talked about was a living wage. So that would what would that would include basically the quality of pay for jobs, right? You have a lot of people who are working. Yes, the employment rate is lower, but how many jobs are each person working? That's the question.
Right.
So you have a lot of people who are also working a lot of these jobs that, the rate of pay is abysmal compared in comparison.
Yeah, I mean, working 40 hours a week should be plenty to be able to, afford a living, make a living, frankly.
Hmm.
And so for those, folks who say, well, and I don't even think they'll even get into this, in terms of
Hmm.
your average pundit or your average politician about, how many jobs a lot of
Hmm.
people are working.
Hmm.
The fact is, yeah, it should be, 40 hours should be plenty, to be able
Hmm.
to live an abundant life, in Massachusetts and in the United States, as I see it.
Right. All right. So, going to my fourth question, this one has to deal with education. So, according to the U.S. News, Massachusetts ranks number two out of 50 in pre-K through 12 education, and they rank number 25th for higher education. What are some prescriptions that you would administer to raise the level of education in Massachusetts so that everyone in all districts have the same level of education statewide?
Yeah, education is a tough nut to crack as far as I see it. Mostly because federal funding for education is just not remotely where it should be,
Hmm.
to get us to a place where there's people are getting a good education. But the reason I say it's a tough nut to crack is because I think we really need to kind of look at the education system in the U.S. and in Massachusetts in particular, kind of from the ground up.
Hmm.
Um, just in terms of the fact that I think the pandemic has really exposed a lot of inequity here,
Hmm.
in terms of folks being expected to basically teach their kids from home, or at the very least, have them get on these Zoom calls or whatever it is, get to their education remotely, and there's a wide disparity in the degree of internet access that folks have.
Hmm.
Um, and that's not cool. That you should just be saying, oh, well, just go from home, and Godspeed, good luck to you. That like
Yeah.
that's not okay.
Yeah.
But what it also says is, the degree to which we look at, we sort of say, you have to go K through 12, you have to go then to college, and that's the way that you're supposed to do it. Is, I think, just it's a broken,
Mm.
and it's a broken like notion of the way education should be. Um,
Mm.
you know, I'm not familiar as much with the trade school experience. It's not something that I was very exposed to, if I'm being honest. But the
Mhm.
idea that people shouldn't be encouraged to go to trade school, um, if that's something that they see value in, if I guess, to put it another way, if they want to basically put in their hours and then spend the rest of their life, enjoying themselves, that should be something that's well within their reach. So I think, I guess, to put it, as simply as I can, like, we need to really rethink the way we look at like accreditation for,
Mhm.
degrees and things like
Mm.
that. The standardized testing is just terribly inequitable in our country,
Mhm.
and sort of causes folks to be taught to the test, so to
Mm.
speak.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll just speak briefly from my own personal experience. So, I went to undergrad, as I mentioned, for international relations. I thought, I didn't get into this, but I thought I was going to be a diplomat coming out of college. But I
Mm.
graduated, in the midst of the Great Recession,
Mhm.
and it became abundantly clear that there was sort of a migration from the private sector to the public sector for jobs, because those jobs are more reliable. You can expect that the government will keep government afloat, in one way or another, and particularly government jobs and their politicians afloat in
Mhm.
terms of the money that they're making. And so, as a result, the rest of us, who are coming out of college, and want to support, want to do something good for the world, right? Like I wanted to, and help, make, bring more harmony. I prefer the term peace to harmony, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Mhm.
It's on my shirt, but peace is loud.
Mhm.
But yeah, so basically, I went to work, uh, doing tech support over the phone, for Apple, iPhones and iPads, those kind of
Mhm.
products. And basically, I there was no way to kind of turn back from there and to kind of get where I wanted to go.
Mhm.
And in part, I actually, I blame is a strong word, but I also experienced in undergrad this notion of, well, let's put it this way: the international relations discipline at my liberal arts school, was very neoliberal, was very sort of colonialist, imperialist.
Mhm.
Was I've basically been working since then to kind of decolonize my mind a little bit.
Mm.
And I guess this goes to another point, which is the degree to which there's sort of an educational dogma, within any number of disciplines, that it's like, this is the way you're kind of supposed to think, um,
Mhm.
is another problem that we could really use a lot of work on. But yeah, so I graduated, and I went on this whole career path in the direction of tech entrepreneurship. Started a small
Mhm.
tech startup with a friend from high school, and did this whole thing, and basically, like I said, got laid off.
Mhm.
But in the midst of that, I also was kind of convinced, like, okay, you did this this first startup in conversational artificial intelligence, Siri, Google Now, like that kind of technology.
Mhm.
Well, what you should do, since your company kind of succeeded in the nominal sense of, like, our tech was acquired, by the parent company for Chicago Tribune, if that matters to anybody.
Mhm.
But that all that money mostly went to reimbursing our investors. We didn't see a lot of upside from that. So it was like, okay, I don't have a lot of money in the bank, but maybe a decent bit that I could use, for my next endeavor. What should that be? And I was basically told, well, grad school. That's what you should do. Go back to
Mhm.
school. And
Mhm.
I was reluctant, because I'd had this experience where I wrote a undergraduate thesis about, like, returning to some pre-colonial modes of governance in the sub-Saharan Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Because I studied abroad in Cameroon, and I'm just I could lead us down a whole bunch of paths there. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so anyway, so I was really reluctant, but that
Mm-hmm.
just seemed like what I was supposed to do. And finding a job when you'd done this little tech startup was tricky. And so
Yeah.
basically, I encountered a similar problem when I went back to school. I had this idea for my graduate thesis, and it sort of challenged the orthodoxy, because that's how I could convince myself to, put the effort into writing a 50-page paper. And basically, they said we don't have anybody that would support this research. And by the way,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to finish your degree, you're past you're past your time in terms of the semester, so you're going to have to pay us more money. And I basically was like, I've just about run out. Like, I don't have money to expend, and I already, I did my program in a year and a half. It was supposed to be a 2-year long program. I did it in a year and a half, so I could, basically not have to worry about,
Yeah.
housing for another semester while I was completing my degree. And so I basically had to be like, I can't continue. I don't have funds to finish this off. So all of this is to say, like, there's this educational orthodoxy that I think we have to fight through, and it's all to say, like, there's a lot that needs to be done in our education system, and we do have a great education
Mm-hmm.
system, broadly speaking, in Massachusetts. We have some problems with high school graduation levels
Mm-hmm.
as well. But all of this is to say there's a lot that we can change, and I'm open to it. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear it. I talk to my community members all the time about this issue, and like I say, it's a tough nut to crack, but we need to think about it from the ground up, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
apologies for the long-winded answer, but yeah, I
No.
have some personal experience in struggling with the degree to which our education system is setting us up for success.
Yeah. Actually, you're talking to somebody that went to vocational school.
Nice.
And so, as far as vocational school goes, I think it is underutilized within this nation. Um, uh, and not everyone, a academic secondary education is not for everyone. For some people, maybe a vocational secondary education is right for them. But it gets downplayed so much that a lot of people don't consider it as an option. And from what I've observed, there's an oversaturation of college degrees in the nation, and there's an undersaturation of vocational abilities and skills within the nation. This is why you have a lot of people who have vocations in masonry and being an electrician or in welding, things like that. They're able to command much higher salaries than even some people who have a postgraduate degree because there is very little of them to really build things. So I think there needs to be a balance in that. And I think that we need to have more of a balance in that area, not having one more than the other, but giving people the ability to make that choice of what is best for them instead of what's the most lucrative for them for the future. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean it's so multifaceted, and you have to meet people where they are in terms of, like, neurodiversity of students, and
Hmm.
you know and ambition in certain senses, like what they want to get out of their education. Like, this
Hmm.
isn't, some people, like I said, like they want to, like, they might want to get a vocational job, and I don't know your experience. I'd love to hear more if you're open to talking about it. But
Hmm.
maybe they just want to, like, get their vocational certificate and kind of put in the hours, and, like I said, kind of live their life. Or maybe
Hmm.
they want to spend their time in academia and, like, go
Hmm.
through their postdoc or whatever it is, to
Hmm.
really delve truly deeply into some
Hmm.
discipline. And I think we need to be more cognizant of the full range of people's
Hmm.
like experience of education and their
Yeah.
desire for education, for lack of better, phrasing.
Yeah, definitely. I would like to go to the next question. Um, and thank you for your answers on this. This is really good stuff, by the way.
Oh, good.
Um,
Glad to hear it.
yeah,
Good
yeah,
content. That's what we
yeah,
want.
yeah. This is my next question. So this question actually has to deal with healthcare, and I know you spoke about healthcare earlier and your stands for healthcare. Um, so this is more or less to kind of continue that conversation because we all know that you're for single payer healthcare. But healthcare is a massive issue being, in a pandemic that we're still going through at this point in time. Now,
Yeah.
The Center for Health Information and Analysis in Massachusetts in 2019 stated that they had an uninsured rate of 2.9%, which is some of the lowest in the nation. What can be done for the residents to cover the remaining 3%? Now, I know you spoke about having a universal healthcare system. Uh, is there any type of methods that you're willing or to do in order to push for that while you're in state senate?
Push for to fill that 3% gap. Is that what you
Yeah.
mean?
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So right. So 97% is a very high percentage for
Hmm.
attainment of health insurance. But
Hmm.
as we know, there's a big difference between health insurance and health care, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Um, and so if I can put it a little bluntly, that 97% basically means nothing in terms of people's actual level of care, broadly speaking.
True.
The number in terms of underinsured folks is closer somewhere between 1 in 5 and 1 in 4, something like that.
Hmm.
Bay staters are underinsured, which basically means they have insurance, but um, basically, getting the care that they need would put them either into medical bankruptcy, or they're at the very least, clear them out,
Yeah.
basically, of the funds that they have. And so, the reason that I am so passionate about healthcare is because, first of all, I think it's something that's fully attainable. Even just within the state system, the mass care system that's sort of sitting in the legislature right now, we would
Hmm.
save billions of dollars a year by having that system.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, so I kind of hate to be blunt about the whole 97% 3% figure, but the fact is it's not a meaningful statistic in terms of people's actual like level of care and level of health.
Hmm.
And so I prefer to go to the 1 in 5 figure,
Hmm.
where it's just that's where you're actually getting at people's level of care. And I know you have your struggles with healthcare.
Hmm.
I'm a little bit familiar with you going through dialysis. We're actually in not remotely the same boat, but on the same sort of direction, in that I have a mild form of chronic kidney disease.
Hmm.
Um, and so, I have concerns that someday I'm going to need dialysis, and
Yeah.
um, I that's terrifying. And the fact is, I talked about kind of crossing socioeconomic classes
Yeah.
in my career, and the fact is, what's kept me afloat, honestly, has been just, for lack of a better way to put it, avoiding the doctor. I'm
Hmm.
just concerned that if I go, I'm gonna find something that I'm gonna have to deal with, and I'm worried what that will do. And I got
Yeah.
a medical bill or two that just basically made me convinced it's better to just not go. Um,
Hmm.
and that's not the way that we should live with our relationship to healthcare in this country.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate right now that I saved up enough money that I can, do this campaign full time. But come November, if I'm not fortunate enough to, win the election, I'm going to be looking for my next job, and pretty urgently, and concerned about the degree to which I can I'll be able to, afford healthcare. I also have a chronic back injury from a car accident when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just soft tissue damage. So they basically told me like we could go in there and do exploratory back surgery, but we don't even know if it would actually have any impact. And that was way back in high school. And, we could get into mental health issues and all this stuff. I have
Mm-hmm.
a very personal, set of experiences with healthcare and
Mm-hmm.
mental health care. Um, but yeah, like the fact is like, my partner has a steady job. She's able to, make it through. And, she's kind of bringing home, she's vegetarian. So she'll say, bringing home the hummus instead of bringing home the bacon. But for us right now, but, the fact is when November comes around, I'm going to be out there and we have, as I'm sure you know, and as your audience knows,
Mm-hmm.
we have a healthcare system that's very dependent on your job. And that's a big problem too. But anyway, I could go on forever about healthcare. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll probably leave it there for now.
Yeah. But I mean, hummus is fire. I discovered it earlier this year. So,
This
but
year, huh?
yeah.
A
But
newcomer to the hummus experience. Okay.
yep, newcomer. Yeah. But one of the things that I just wanted to kind of harp on the point you were talking about, how that 97% number doesn't mean anything. It's kind of like that same percentage of, you know, the unemployment number doesn't
Mm,
really mean
yeah.
anything when it's about the quality of the job. In the same vein, it's about the quality of care that people are getting. And you have a lot of people who they may have insurance, but at the same time, being underinsured and you not being able to afford the co-pays and deductibles, you know, even though you're paying premium after premium each month, you still don't go to the doctor. And so we have a type of uh, a system. It's not even a healthcare system. It's more of a just hope and pray that you don't get sick, and just in case you get sick, then that's when you go to the doctor, and instead of a preventative care system. And in more of a preventative care system, a lot of these ailments that people have, they will catch early. And also, people look at me weird like this, but in a healthcare system, like I'm for full nationalization of our healthcare system. With that being said, it would make gyms and yoga studios subsidized by the government. So they would be completely free for everybody. So you don't have to worry about not having to go to the gym or to a spa or something like that to also take care of your body. That also will be taken care of as well. So, but the thing is that it's about maintaining a healthy lifestyle, not just taking care of you when you're sick, but the maintenance as well. Because as we
Yeah.
know that, if the people who are well to do and they have a car, they go to get their car serviced. People who are poor go to get their car repaired. See what I
Mm,
mean? And that's
yeah.
the difference. We, as poor people, have to get our body repaired at the hospital versus people who are wealthy, they get their body serviced on a regular basis. And
Yeah.
so I think that's something that we also need to start uh, fixing our mind on, is having a system where we all can continuously get our bodies serviced instead of always having to go for repairs.
Absolutely, and the reason I fight for a single payer is because I know that I believe strongly that that is achievable, that we can get there.
Mhm.
And this little, sort of behind the scenes, but suffice it to say, I'm increasingly thinking that going through the legislature isn't going to be enough, and that in the state of Massachusetts we're probably going to have to go for a ballot initiative if we're going to be able to get
Mhm.
there to single payer. But I bring this all up to say, when you talk about full nationalization,
Yeah.
um, we need people that are pushing the envelope further. And for my part, like I say, I think single payer is something that's achievable in the state of Massachusetts.
Okay.
And but right now, like I think we can get there soon
Mhm.
if there's the political will to do it. But I very much appreciate folks that are pushing the envelope further.
Mhm.
And we need that. We need that in the political discourse. So
Mhm. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. And a great thing, if I can offer a suggestion, and this suggestion goes out to anybody that's running either independent or third parties, is when you get together with different organizations, you team up with them on basically a a dual front where it's like, okay, you guys are out there in the streets, and I will join you out in the streets, and we will protest at these, the places where our elected officials are. But then, as I'm also in office, I'll be out there with you. But then I'll also go into the state house or the Senate, and I will also push for this as well. So you're doing it on a dual front. So then they basically have someone on the inside. And so I think this is something that is not done as much. And it's like a teaming up of saying, okay, you guys are out here. I'm going to be with you out there. But I also, and then also when you're in the state Senate, be like, look, come on into the state house and also make some noise when we're also doing, pushing for this as well, because
Yeah.
that's our house essentially. So, that's something I always, wonder about, especially within the duopoly. I don't necessarily see, especially on a federal level, and I think should be done, but it's never done. So, and I think that's because a duopoly is just they're too far gone. So that's one of the things I was thinking about too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I resonate with that so strongly. I think it's imperative. The way I talk about it on the campaign trail, so to speak,
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
just the value of being what I call like an advocate in office, right? So not just being, and I sort of I'm playing around with the term activist as it applies to me. I see myself more as an advocate for the issues, but maybe I'm an activist for the issues as well. Um,
Hmm.
that's just a terminological thing, comes from my linguistics background. But anyway, suffice to say, I want to be an advocate in office. Like I don't just want to be there, going through the motions, trying to pass bills, that sort of thing. And especially, as someone who's seeking district office at the state level, I want to continue to be an advocate for issues at the federal level as well. And
Hmm.
so all of that means to me is that I want to be out there on the streets with the people, pushing dual power,
Hmm.
and I think that that's hugely important. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's great. I love it.
yeah, yeah. And just one thing, you know, if if you're successful into getting into office, regularly coming back to the independent media to talk to us is also a very important thing. Unfortunately, you have a lot of them that go into office and then they suddenly are like, JB who? you know.
Mm,
So also that's very important too, and that's part of
yeah.
keeping ourselves grounded too. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think that's very important. And yeah, there are precious few
Yeah.
politicians, unfortunately, that come back to independent media. Maybe some of the big dogs, as they see it for independent media, they will. But you gotta open it back up to the people for sure.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
independent media has democratized that in an important
Hmm.
way. And so we need to. Yeah, I absolutely think that's the right approach, is
Hmm.
to continue to come back.
Hmm.
If I'm so fortunate as to be elected.
Hmm. All right. Thank you very much. Um, Now, this next question actually has to deal with actually with Roe versus Wade. So,
Mm,
as you know, Roe versus Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court Friday of last week, and so it has left the entire country in an uproar over body autonomy and our rights. Shama Sawant was here recently, and she made a proposal in her city council of Seattle to make it a sanctuary city for the people and their doctors seeking safe abortion and other reproductive health services. Would you be in favor of introducing legislation that will prevent police in Massachusetts from arresting people, either patients or doctors, for outside warrants related to anti abortion laws around the country, as Council Member Sawant has pushed for?
100%. Count me in. I think that's absolutely a vital approach. When our neighbors, and there are some concerns about our neighbor to the north in New Hampshire,
Mm-hmm.
that they might go in this direction and start pushing for
Mm-hmm.
legislation to ban abortion. Um, and so it feels close to home. I think there are a lot of base staters that there can be a degree of complacency where it's just like, well, we're okay, it's codified in law here, so we're going to be fine. But no, I think we need to take a lot more aggressive approach, and basically just recognize that like they're coming for us next. Forget which figure basically came out. It might have been Mike Pence, came out and basically called for a national abortion ban. So suddenly, nowhere's safe, right? And yeah, and by the way, in addition to what Shamus Swan is calling for, which I think I very much support, there has been a regional effort on the West Coast. Forget what it's called, but they're basically saying we're going to do a lot more to make it easier for folks to get an abortion, to travel to our region to get an abortion. And I've called on the sort of presumptive governor for next term, Maura Healey, here in Massachusetts, to initiate a similar pact on the East Coast. I think Shama Swant's proposal goes further than these, and so I'd support that. But at the very least, we should be doing more to support people regionally. And I'm a big proponent of regional, basically like work to combat the overreaches of the Supreme Court in particular right now. And I think there's a lot that could be done. But yeah, in short, 100%, I'm in favor of what Shama Swant's proposing.
Okay. Well, in that same vein, my next question actually has to deal with housing. So, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, but according to your website, one of the policies you're pushing for is to, quote, subsidize vacant apartments and houses as temporary free housing for the unhoused. Now, as someone who has faced housing insecurity many times, even down to this day, what methods are you willing to undergo in order to push for this legislation to provide housing to your district and end homelessness?
Yeah. So first off, at some point, I'd love to get an update on how things are going. I know you've had some struggles with housing very recently, and I'd love to hear how things are going for you. So, affordable housing is one of those issues that I'm sort of new to, like, my understanding of it, and have been really working to kind of bolster my bona fides on.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a new group that I've joined in my local area, called Housing for All Gloucester.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's hugely, what I'm getting at is I think it's a hugely important issue, and I'm really trying to educate myself on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll admit, basically, what I'm proposing is something I haven't really heard much of,
Mm-hmm.
especially from your average politician that you hear on I don't know, mainstream media, whatever platform your average politician has access to. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think there's a lot that can be done. There's a lot of vacant housing, and the
Mm-hmm.
idea that we're not filling that housing with the folks that are housing insecure, or that are full on unhoused. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that that seems to me like a really easy approach, is to just say we're going to subsidize the rent for those vacant properties, to make those available to the
Mm-hmm.
unhoused and the housing insecure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, Aside from that, like I say, I'm very much learning, and I think it's so far, from what I can tell, it's such a big issue that it's going to take some federal money, and so I will be
Mm-hmm.
working with the state government to propose, basically, to get more funding for affordable housing from the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not certain what that bill looks like yet, but I think that that's something that we absolutely need to do. It's such a huge issue.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is, I mentioned that I moved out of Boston, the Boston area, because I was struggling to afford my rent out there. I'm
Mm-hmm.
starting to worry about being priced out here in Gloucester as well,
Yeah.
of my current place. And it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's part of the reason why I joined this local housing group.
Mm-hmm.
is just to kind of get my head around the issue and the complexity of it. And there's all sorts of acronyms that you need to know when you're
Yeah.
learning about, and like codes, like number codes and stuff, to understand the affordable housing issue. So
Hmm.
suffice to say, it's really important to me in terms of just, economic justice for people, economic rights for people.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's just a couple of things that I've been thinking about with the issue. Happy to go into
Yeah.
more detail if you like.
Well, actually, I'm glad you said that because one of the things I wanted to share, and I'm not sure if you were able to see this, but as far as Shama Sawant, this is a leaflet that she had for her, city in Seattle, and she actually talked about some of these. And I would like to show this to anybody who is running for office. Some of these different policy prescriptions that, excuse me, she was pushing for that could be implemented into your own policies as well. Um, so, like for instance, one of the first ones is a residential rent control without corporate loopholes. So it says every $100 increase in average rent increases homelessness by 15%. So it talks about having a rent control, and if you guys already have rent control, there are some other different things that could be implemented. Um, One of the things that actually I was impressed with is 6 months, 180-day notice for rent increases. So it's you know once things like that, banning evictions of school children and educators during the school year, ban the use of credit checks, different things like this. Now, it is a very uphill battle, especially against the uh, real estate, uh, essentially big real estate, especially when cities like Boston, uh, you know, and of course you're going to be in SS and Middlesex, and throughout the country. But as far as the fight, I feel like it's a fight worth having. So I just wanted to, bring this up as well as
Oh yeah,
different because
yeah,
I'm sorry, go
yeah.
ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yeah,
No, no,
no,
you're fine.
I think a lot of this sounds very sensible. I'm sure some people will look at the text of this and think it's very radical.
Hmm.
But one of the things that I've kind of been exposed to as I've been educating myself on this issue is about the concept of rent control, and I think this is like a
Hmm.
boogeyman, that certain folks use, and just make it sound like something that it's not really.
Hmm.
You know, uh, some other people call it rent stabilization,
Hmm.
these sorts of things. But one of the things I came across was this sort of analogy,
Hmm.
basically for folks that are, seeking, actual houses, like actual mortgages. There's something called a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. It's pretty common. Um,
Hmm.
and guess what? 30-year fixed rate mortgage is? It's rent control. It's just for your,
Yeah.
it's just for your house.
Yeah.
It's basically a way of saying we're not going to, raise the rate that you're paying, and so that is controlling your rent. That is rent control. And in a similar vein, there's this, I think it's a tax benefit called the mortgage interest deduction. And obviously,
Hmm.
like, all this language is super, can make people's eyes glaze over, and I'd argue it's probably meant to, because it, helps prevent
Hmm.
us from making change around it. But what is a mortgage interest deduction? That's
Hmm.
subsidized housing. That's a way of the government subsidizing a part of your housing.
Yeah.
And so when people use like terms like this, that they're trying to weaponize those terms in order to stifle change. And so we really need to get our heads around these terms in order to fight back against basically the propaganda that keeps
Hmm.
these systems from serving people, frankly.
Wouldn't it be cool if we had a rent interest deduction?
Yeah, sure.
I could
Why not?
definitely use that.
Yeah. But yeah, it's really, I mean, yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it's so complicated. And like I said, there's so many acronyms and all this stuff. And I think it's designed to make it inaccessible to
Yeah.
people, to make it hard for people to understand, and basically just throw their hands up and just say, well, I guess I'll have to deal with my, paying 50% or more of my, what I bring home to my landlord. Like, that's
Hmm.
that's terrible. Should
Yeah.
not happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, um, uh, after doing a little bit of research, so the median rent in Massachusetts is $1,336 per month. That's according to the Boston Globe. So essentially, you would need at least $25 an hour in order to afford an apartment at that rate. But the minimum wage, so far as what I've researched, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the minimum wage in Massachusetts is $14.25 an hour. So you basically would need to make at least about $11 an hour more in order to afford a one bedroom apartment in the state of Massachusetts. So,
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, so the way Massachusetts works um, for minimum wage right now is basically they have been raising the rate at what is it? I think 75 cents an hour per year. So next year it'll reach that coveted $15 an hour
yeah.
thing that most folks talk about. Obviously, I think that's not remotely in line with where we should be. I
Hmm.
think $25 an hour is more in line. um, I'll be sort of I'll be honest about this. I think it will be tough for some small businesses to be able to afford that for their workers. So I think
Hmm.
the way I see it is we need to basically put us on a trajectory to catch up with productivity, to
Hmm.
catch up with $25 an hour. But I think for bigger businesses, they should be able to afford to pay that tomorrow. And so that's certainly something that I will be fighting for in government if I'm so fortunate as to be elected.
Hmm. Could there possibly be a I hate to, to use the word means tested for this, but a means testing where if a business has, so many employees or so much revenue that's going towards the top as a proportion, then they can raise their pay really to either $25 an hour or to maybe a 10-to-1 ratio between the top earner and the bottom earner, whichever is greater for the workers.
Yeah, I
Could
think there's
that be
yeah,
something?
yeah, I think there's all sorts of creative ways to look at the minimum
Hmm.
wage issue. Frankly, I think the government could subsidize wages for companies that just like I worked in the restaurant industry until last
Hmm.
August. Like it's a very cash poor
Hmm.
business, frankly, and there are months where the general manager basically just won't take home any money. They'll just say like in order to keep the business afloat, like I'm not taking any money this month,
Hmm.
which is crazy to me. Like to have to do
Hmm.
that in order to be able to keep the lights on. But yeah, like subsidizing the wages for businesses like that at the
Hmm.
state level or at the federal level could be huge. And yeah, I think there's a whole lot of other
Hmm.
things that we aren't thinking about that we haven't come up with even yet that can help solve this problem.
Yeah. Also, implementing possibly a ballot initiative to get worker co-ops, and having a tax subsidy for worker co-ops so that more worker co-ops can actually pop up within the district can also help out with that too, because more workers are taking home their surplus of their labor, so then it actually lifts all boats within an area as well. I think
It
that
sounds
be.
like maybe you took a look at my website. I don't know. Yeah, I talk about tax incentives for things like reorganization into worker co-ops, worker representation on corporate boards,
Hmm.
unionization. What else? Greater employee stock ownership. For folks to actually get a piece of the pie for the
Hmm.
companies that they work for.
Hmm.
There's a whole bunch of stuff like that, and I think our government should be, yeah, incentivizing that through our tax system. So
Yeah, definitely. This is actually part of the uh, more democracy in the marketplace makes for a freer marketplace, including for common goods. And this is where you talked about tax incentives for unionization and greater employee stock ownership. Um, and grant more workers overtime pay and substantially reduce exemptions that stiff workers. These are some really good policies that you actually have on your website. And yes, I had the website up the whole time.
I just had a feeling. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I like to research the people before they come on.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, the one of the let me see. Are we up to the final question? Hang on. Oh yeah. Okay. So this is going to be the final question.
Okay.
So in the 2020 census, the population of Black people in Massachusetts was 513,000 people, or 7.7% of the population. Regarding systemic racism and white supremacy that we face along with our brown brethren, how can we produce a more equal and equitable Massachusetts for the people who look like me?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what I talked about with regard to basically evening out the tax system, helping working people um, by making basically having them pay a little bit less in taxes could put
Mhm.
a good bit more in their wallets. But also, it's pretty straightforward. Reparations is on my platform
Mhm.
as a state senate candidate. I think it's high time that this is a debt owed. This is something that we owe to
Mhm.
our citizens, and as frankly, as a wealthy state and as a state with um, comparatively a smaller African American population to
Mhm.
other states of our size or larger, um, we can afford it. We can absolutely afford it. And so I think that that's huge. Is just
Mhm.
it's something that I'm calling for. It's something that I recognize may be fairly controversial in my district, but
Mhm.
it's something that matters to me. So it's something that I'll be calling
Mhm.
for sure. So yeah, those just a couple things.
Yeah. I mean, as far as the part where you said it's controversial, I imagine that it would be. I mean, you have over 75% population of white or Caucasian people within the state. And so you may have quite a few people who will say, well, what is good is that going to do? There's such a small microcosm of the state, only about less than 7.5% of our population. Why put so much focus on them? But from what it looks like, you're tackling it because not because it's the popular thing to do, but because it's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah, and frankly, it's achievable. I mean, we've got a wealthy state. It's time to build a more equitable Massachusetts, as I think you were getting at there. And this is one way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, in my district is wider than the state overall, I believe, by a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Basically, when you go outside of Boston, it gets it's pretty white. let's just let's just be real about it. So, but yeah, I think there's if people understand that it's a debt owed, if you make the case that this
Yeah.
is something that we can do, that we
Mm-hmm.
should do, if we care
Yeah.
about equity, if we care about improving the state of these wealth disparities that we have
Mm-hmm.
in our state, it seems like something that we should take a moral stand on. And like I said, it helps that we can afford to take a moral stand on it, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the reasons I fight for it.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think that a lot of people don't really take into consideration is that, of course, there's the moral argument of reparations, but there's also an economic argument for reparations too, because people would actually be anybody who is non-black would actually benefit indirectly from reparations. And as far as reparations go, would it be for you just um a monetary redistribution, or would it also include other things as well?
Yeah, so to be honest, I'm open to any sort of implementation. It
Mhm.
seems like the most straightforward to me to make it a strictly monetary one in terms of helping more Black Americans be able to afford to buy their first house.
Mhm.
Things like that. I think it's
Mhm.
just a cash infusion is really simple and really straightforward. But I'm absolutely open to other
Mhm.
options for
Yeah.
ways to fund that. That honestly might make it even more sort of quote unquote affordable for the state to
Yeah.
do. But
Mhm.
that's just the it seems straightforward, and it
Hmm.
seems like a good way to sort of make the policy
Hmm.
message simple for
Hmm.
folks. But that doesn't mean I'm not open to other ways of approaching it, for sure.
Yeah, one of the things that I think, and we've talked about this on RBN quite a few times, is reparations is great. However, you also have to tackle the systemic issues that are involved with it. Because, like for instance, the police violence. One of the things that people know about me, and I'm not sure if you know about, but I am what you call an abolitionist. So I believe in defunding the police on the road to police abolition, and reinstituting how we look at public safety. So one of those things I think is also vitally important is that, if somebody gets a reparations check but they're still in prison, what good is it going to do? So I think that has to be one of the things that's implemented in this justice as well. On top of it, a lot of us also have student loan debt and medical debt, things like this that also, and then on top of it, you also have a lot of, landlords. If we were to implement this, they might, raise the rent simply because of the color of our skin, because they know that we have that reparations check. So they'll think,
Mm.
oh, well, we can actually milk this. So I think also coming at it from a systemic standpoint where you guard the people so that they aren't taken advantage of simply because of the restitution that they were paid by the state. I think that's also a really important thing to implement as well going forward. Just as a
Oh
rhetorical
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I think it absolutely has to be paired with protections that basically prevent people from exploiting it in
Mhm.
a way that basically takes it right back from them when they get it. When they get reparations like that. That's very vitally important. And
Mhm.
I mention this tongue in cheek, but it's just a fact of the matter. Like we are a white district in a white state.
Mhm.
Predominantly, and um, so defund the police, or abolish the police, um, is is a tough sell here, I'd say, for a lot of folks in my district. I'm just being,
Mhm.
frank about it.
Mhm.
Um, but so, one of the things that I have sort of worked into my platform is basically ways to kind of get around that. And I'm also a member of a coalition to prevent domestic violence here
Mhm.
on the North Shore in my area. And
Mhm.
so one of my sort of back doors to getting at this problem would be forming a task force for domestic violence and child abuse in the state that also, that coincidentally, if you will, would require police departments to fund it with their current budget. So the idea basically being they're not being it's a back, if you see what I'm getting at, it's a backdoor to kind of basically
Mhm.
getting at the issue of overfunding for the police departments when they're not often out there solving crimes in any remotely level way that they should. um,
Mhm.
and another thing I get into, and it's on my website, like you've seen my website, is
Mhm.
free drug addiction recovery programs. These are
Mhm.
these are ways of kind of addressing the systemic problems that cops frankly are not solving,
Mhm.
and going around them effectively when we're overfunding them, frankly. And um, yeah, I don't want to hide the ball. Like it's a difficult nut to crack to say defund the police or abolish the police in Massachusetts. I think they need to do a better job, and I think there's basically ways that we can demonstrate that we can do a lot of things without them. That we aren't that we are saying that we rely on them for
Mhm. Yeah.
these days, and hopefully that's a way that meets people where they're at in my district,
Mhm.
by framing it in that light. And yeah, I mean the fact of the matter is, because we're a whiter state, like these um, these abuses by the police are that much more in darkness, frankly. And
Mhm.
so I think the other thing is just really public education, bringing that into the light that it is just as much, perhaps, more of a problem here because it's so kind of far back in the shadows that people don't even see it. Um,
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And the thing is that I think it could be sold because it's more of a class issue, because a lot of people think that defunded police is more of a black issue. It's more of a it's also a class issue, because if you look at especially like a lot of largely poorer white areas, the police are also committing, a lot of police brutality, and they're killing people who are part of poor white communities too. So I think that can also be a bit of a sell. It just has to be more, I guess, finessed in that way towards them, to let them know, look, if you guys got the police always messing with you, then maybe just if you can reallocate some of those funds to your community so that you guys can have better education, better housing, things like this, then you guys wouldn't have to deal with the police, and you wouldn't have to commit crimes of opportunity and desperation as well. So,
yeah, and I think another inroad for this, for getting at this issue, is I have a
hmm
couple of good friends that are caseworkers for issues of domestic abuse and sexual exploitation, like all this terrible stuff, and basically creating sort of alternatives to the police that don't
yeah.
have firearms with them.
hmm
Basically, I think is another inroad into this issue,
hmm
and yeah, I mean, like you say, it is about kind of finessing the issue a little bit, and
hmm
trying to meet people where they're at. And I'm always open to suggestions on that. So,
I got you.
but yeah, no, yeah, it's a tough nut to crack, and obviously, you know, George Floyd, the protests around George Floyd came and went, and we didn't get much for it. And
hmm
so I'm trying to use my linguistics background and like figure out the framing for how we get at this issue in a way that meets people where they're at, and it's not easy, but I'm making my best effort, I guess.
hmm hmm Yeah. So just to go into Rockfin, we actually have. Thank you for the tip, Roger Meadows. Roger Meadows says that four should come between the M and A, and Cuddly for M for A. So uh,
So what happened? What is it?
they said because your handle is Cuddly M4A, and he said that the four should come before the M and the A.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think it does on Twitter and on my website, but I don't know. Might be
Okay.
something. Yeah, it's
Okay.
not a big deal.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. He said also, you can't be anti-capitalist unless you're willing to get rid of and abolish all corporations. The part you said you wanted to put workers on the corporate board is not transformational and is a reform. As long as you leave the corporation alive, no matter how many handcuffs you put on it, they'll eventually break their bonds and plunder. He continues. He said, we see this when FDR chose to give a voice for workers and leverage in the workplace via unions, but they still had to fight for everything. Just for the government to roll back the reforms began the day FDR died, starting with the Taft Hartley. This idea may sound good now, but eventually those workers on that board will eventually shrink, as the corporate wing of the board will make sure to shrink them, and push workers off and out of the board. That is, if they can get them to sell their workers out, like we've seen in union leadership. What FDR stopped short of was going beyond by democratizing the workplace, making them worker owned co ops. That is the path we should be going, and abolishing all corporations and replacing them with co ops, not figuring out how to put handcuffs on corporations.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that
hmm
if you'd like. Yeah, I mean,
hmm
I yes, I get it. That some of these reforms are kind of tinkering around the edges, and centering workers on corporate boards um, isn't really what I'm trying to do. I'm trying
hmm
to center more, building real democratic unions, and building the opportunities for companies to be converted into worker cooperatives.
hmm
I probably should center those more on my website and center the corporate boards
hmm
thing less. Um, but I think basically the way I see this is an all of the above approach. I think the more things that we can do to put power in the hands of workers, the better. And I think he brings up a he, she, they, however they identify, brings up a good point about what was it they said? Oh, I'm trying to remember. Um, uh, right, unions being co-opted. I think
Mm-hmm.
that is a serious problem, and I think I've been thinking about this a lot. I think a lot of times you have sort of outside folks come in and build unions
Mm-hmm.
that aren't really sort of grassroots within the organization, and that can be problematic. That can lead to sort of a sense that the cooperative isn't really, or sorry, the union isn't really their own, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important for these to be incredibly democratic organizations, for these to maximize the membership of
Mm-hmm.
the of workers in these cooperatives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if the less that they are, the more problematic those unions can be. And so I think, yeah, we need to fight for the greatest democratization of the union as possible, and the
Mm-hmm.
greatest degree to which it's built.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like it's built from the inside. Because otherwise, yeah, you're there are vulnerabilities. There are huge vulnerabilities, and we see this, by the way, on the fight for um, single payer healthcare too,
Mm-hmm.
with unions kind of being convinced that, oh, we fought for the benefits that you have for your healthcare, so
Mm-hmm.
going for Medicare for all risks you losing that, and it's a total misframing of the issue. But it's the kind of thing that these sort of corporatized unions, for lack of a better term, tend to wrestle with. And so I think the more, like I say, the more democratic the union, and the more sort of sense that the union has at its core, that it's
Mm-hmm.
built from the inside. I
Yeah.
think that tends to fight against some of those problems you can see arise in unions.
Okay. Okay. Roger Meadows also continues. Thank you for the next tip on Rockfin. He says, I used to think it was money that was the problem keeping us from getting the legislation and court rulings we want. I now believe it is the source of where the money is coming from. If they came for the co ops, then they'd come from, I'm sorry, if they came from co ops, then they come from the people who represent the people. Get rid of the corporations, and there will be no one for Supreme Court of the United States to protect, only us who would be represented in a co op. Also, no public banking legislation. Uh, do you want to answer that really quick about public banking legislation?
Yeah, so public banking is another new concept for me. I'd love to see us have a public bank in Massachusetts.
Hmm.
Basically, I'm still educating myself on the issue.
Sure.
So I don't want to come out with a policy like that before I have full sort of sense of it. But yeah, I think public banking could be huge for
Hmm.
Massachusetts. So it's something I'm very much open to.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. He continues. It says annual out of reach project by National Low Income Housing Coalition. The fair market rent for a two-bedroom apartment in Massachusetts is $1,885. In order to afford this level of rent and utilities without paying more than 30% of income on housing, and households must earn $6,282 a month or $75,382 annually. Assuming a 40-hour work week, 52 weeks per year, this level of income translates to a minimum wage of $36.24. Boston, Cambridge, Quincy, HMFA says $44.92. Nantucket County is $38.90. Dukes County, $38. Barnstable Town, Massachusetts is $32.06. Easton, Rainham is $31.42. You can levy a tax on large corporations to use as subsidies. I think you talked about this. Use
Yeah.
as subsidies to give small to mid-sized businesses cover 85 to 100% of labor costs. This way, small businesses don't get hurt. Then peg it to permanently 2% above fair market rent so that you don't have to return to this.
Yeah, I'll just say briefly. I mean, I think it's important to not look at any of these things in a vacuum, right? Like there is a
Hmm.
tendency to be like, Okay, we just need to raise the minimum wage. Okay, we just need to lower, the cost of housing. But really,
Mhm.
yeah, you have to look at those things together and in conjunction with a whole other number of things, that we could for sure get into if we wanted. It has to
Mhm.
be a sort of cumulative approach to have a real impact on the average person. So, yeah,
Mhm.
I get the notion that's like, yeah, if you just look at minimum wage and how crazy the rent is in
Mhm.
Boston and frankly in Essex County as well, then
Mhm.
yeah, $36 is probably more like something that you're going to need. But yeah, you also need to look at how you build more subsidized housing, how you
Mhm.
do things like fill the vacant housing with use it as temporary public housing for people. You have to look at these things together to get a really useful and worthwhile approach to
Mhm.
these issues. And I don't claim to have all the answers,
I got
but
you.
and I think hopefully this comes out, just in the way I talk. Like I'm not a politician.
Mhm.
I'm just a regular guy
Mhm.
who cares about the issues, and I'm learning more every day. And I will never sort of give the impression that I've got it figured out. And I feel like way too many of our politicians will just say, oh, I have my talking point on that, so I'm just going to go forward with my talking point on that. And I
Mhm.
actually made a point this interview of staying away from my notes a little bit more because I have a little bit of social anxiety with interviews.
I got you.
Um, and yeah, I mean, yeah, the fact is, like, I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers, and I think when politicians communicate that way that they do, it's
Mhm.
really disingenuous, and it really separates the people from the politicians in a way that I think is really lacking in constructiveness, frankly. And
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think it is important to have an all of the above approach, to have a cumulative approach on
Mhm.
on issues like
Mhm.
um, economic justice, frankly. And so
Mhm.
I appreciate him going through those numbers there. I think that encapsulates the problem. And yeah,
Yeah.
we got to figure it all out and do a whole bunch of stuff. It's not going to just be one
Mhm.
one solution. It's going to be a bunch of solutions built together.
Yeah. Roger Meadows is a dictionary. I got it. He's a thesaurus. He's an encyclopedia. You gotta respect the Meadows. That's what I
Yeah,
would say.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
And did I get everything, Roger? I just want to make sure in Rockfin that I got everything because I want to make sure. Yeah, I think so. I think I got everything. So as far as you know, one of the things that as a resident of Massachusetts, you have Eric Red. He also works with Savvy Savs, as you know. He
Right.
said his question was, "What does he think of the Democratic Party in Massachusetts?" That's a very interesting question.
Yeah. So I'll say it frankly, which is there's a reason why I'm running as an independent, not a member of the Democratic Party, right? There's a lot of reasons, but suffice
Mhm.
it to say that the fact is in Massachusetts we don't have we have something like a veil in the federal system of a two-party system,
Mhm.
but in Massachusetts it's really a one-party system. It's run by the Democratic Party, and when you have that
Yeah.
much power, it doesn't matter how good your intentions are, you're going to be corrupted by that power. And
Mm.
we have one of the least transparent legislatures in the country. I
Mm.
think as a
Interesting.
indirect result of that, basically in the state house, you are there's no public record of your votes. So people are able to kind of
Wow.
gather the data around that, but and so they can kind of approximate those votes in a lot of cases. But as I
Okay.
understand it, it's not a matter of public record, and that's something that they voted on. They as a body
Mm.
said, we don't really think we need to make this public, so we're just going to not. Um, and so yeah, this is the problem with a full on one party state, frankly. And while we're quote unquote progressive on a number of issues, and have been at the forefront of a number of social issues, when it comes to economic issues, we've got a long way to go, and getting there means building a real multi-party system in Massachusetts. And I don't really think, frankly, the Republican Party um, has much of a place in Massachusetts anymore, and I think that that's borne out by the fact that we become basically a one-party state. But there's ample reason for the Libertarian Party, the Green Rainbow Party, which is the state affiliate of the Green Party in Massachusetts. These should have full access to the ballot, should be invited on all the debate stages. These candidates are just as worthwhile as anyone, and we haven't gotten into it that much, but I see myself very much as a democracy reform candidate. I'd love to see us have a real democracy in this country, and ranked choice is a huge one, as this comment is saying.
Hmm.
There's a lot of voting reforms that we could take in this country. Ranked choice is among them, and one that I think, again, it's similar to single payer,
Hmm.
as the way forward for healthcare. Ranked choice voting is a big enough movement. There's enough people know about it that it's something that we could implement. There are other systems that we could go for, like star
Hmm.
voting. I don't know if you're familiar with star
Hmm.
voting. But it's another system, but it's less well known. So ranked choice voting is probably a good way to go in the immediate near term. I'd also love to see us have fully nonpartisan primaries where everyone runs on the same ballot in the primary, and the primaries themselves would be ranked choice, and it would be top two. So the idea being that when you go through the ranked choice process, you get your top two candidates. By the way, you encourage sort of cross candidate uh, campaigning, if you will, where so basically to avoid the problem of the progressive vote being split. You encourage candidates to say, hey, rank me one, but rank this other candidate number two,
Okay.
and that gets over some of the problems of ranked choice voting. But yeah, I could honestly go on another hour about democracy reform. I think it's hugely important. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I'll leave it I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you so very much. I didn't want to take too much of your time because I know you're pretty busy with your running your campaign, but I was able to get all my questions plus some from the viewing audience, and I just really want to thank you for being able to come in and answer these questions. These aren't very easy questions, for us to answer, especially. But at the same time, I'm glad that you took it like a champ and were able to answer some of the questions that I had, as well as those of us on Rockfin YouTube, as I've been able to ask. So I appreciate you coming.
No, this has been awesome. And, I mentioned, a little bit of social anxiety is a problem that I have, and it's not something that you see commonly among your average political candidate.
Hmm.
But, it was one of those things where, I just saw a need in the community to step out. And the
Hmm.
other thing that I can say is, coming from the tech startup world, I was sort of in a project manager role, which basically a way of putting it is, I work behind the scenes most of the time. I'm the one that, works with the developers to tinker around and come up with solutions. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, what I realized was, you know, um, I think I've got some good ideas, and those ideas aren't going to come out unless I say them publicly and,
Hmm.
get them out into the world. And so that's what made me step from behind, the computer
Yeah.
and get out there to talk with people. So I really appreciate the opportunity. It's great to have another opportunity to talk with one of the RBN folks.
Hmm.
I loved getting to meet Rome and Sabby when they came for the tour for the poor.
Hmm.
You guys are just great. The RBN group is great, and I
Thank
make a
you.
point of when I see folks going after RBN, saying that they're grifters, blah 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 blah. Like I've met a lot of you guys. I've talked a lot with a lot of you guys individually and online and on things like this. And yeah, you guys are the real deal. And if people think you're too radical, whatever, but they can't attack your credentials as working people that are fighting for real change. So I'm really
Thank.
happy to have the opportunity to be on with you.
Yeah.
And thanks so much.
Yeah. I feel lucky because here I am. a high school graduate able to interview people who have postgraduate degrees and doctorates and things like that. So I feel privileged, to be able to have all of you, on here as well. I just want to thank you for anybody that's watching. Also, just to let you know, I put Terrence link tree as well in the description so that you guys can go to his website to check that out. I also put it inside the chat on both Rockfin as well as YouTube and Twitch, so you guys can check out his policies there. Also, you can also check out his page also on Twitter and reach out if you have any more detailed questions that you would like to ask Terrence as well. I just want to thank you for joining. And look, whenever you want to talk about some more successes or some more policies that you're implementing, you have an open invitation to return to the JB show.
Awesome. I love the conversation. Thank you so much, James. Really appreciate it. This is
All
great.
right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
So that was a wonderful, wonderful conversation. And if you guys ever can, also, I just wanted to also mention that I think he has his donation tab on there as well, if you guys are feeling so inclined. Um, but also mutual aid, don't forget about that. But also to people who are going outside duopoly, you guys want to also to give people like him some consideration too. One of the things that I think that um, is great is that we now have people who are seeing the duopoly and how it actually is operating, especially since now we have uh, you know s- the onset of Roe v. Wade being overturned. You have now crowds of people basically saying that, especially to the Democratic Party, that we're calling your bluff. Like, what are you doing? And so, because of that, and because we're seeing this now, a lot of people who are either running independent or third party are now starting to get more consideration. Now, that's not to say that is they're still running again, in a rigged system. They are, but at the same time, it's also kind of showing number one how rigged the system is. Number two is actually going to open the eyes of a lot more people because now, since they're no longer looking at the Democratic Party or the duopoly in general, now they're seeing it, it's kind of like the mother hippo putting the baby hippo on a log and just sitting back and watching and saying, "I dare you, crocodile, to go after my kid. And if I see you with your hand in the cookie jar, then I'm gonna snap you in half." You know, basically, it's the American people being that mother hippo and going, "Okay, I dare you, snap, and I'm gonna snap you in half." And if it does happen, then guess what happens? It's basically the for the lack of a better term, fuck around and find out, right? So that's something that I'm kind of anticipating to see. But I'm going to go to the chat just to chat with the folks here. You see, Michelle says it is a shame we've had to get this divided economically, politically, and socially. Absolutely, I think one of the things that um, we are noticing is that the class divide is so stark that now um, they are using identities of people to go after one another. And I think that a lot of people who typically are more, especially socially right wing, they don't realize that they're being used as well. I don't think, and they also have to realize they're being brainwashed too, because now they're looking at people like myself and saying, "Oh well, you know, they're so focused on the culture war that they don't see that the people at the top are pitting us against one another." I want to win the culture war after the class war is won, basically. And I think that's something that a lot of times we are trying to win on. So um, yeah, Sulamoon says they're calling bluffs, but are they still vote blue no matter who? Just vote harder. Yeah, there was a young lady that was actually being interviewed by Status Quo, and she basically was accurate in her description of the Democratic Party waiting 50 years and holding Roe v. Wade in front of us as a way to say, oh, if you guys don't donate to us and vote for us, then here's the boogeyman. But now that boogeyman basically is here because of the Democratic Party's fault. But yet that young lady was saying, but yeah, I'm still going to vote blue. And it's like, are you serious right now? So there's a lot of us that are going, you missed it by that much, And so unfortunately, I just, it just, yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. 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 Some people laughed at the clip. Some people are just like, "Ooh, like, what are you doing, young lady?" So yeah. Omar Rona says philanthropy and charity is a tax and money laundering scam. Mutual aid is the way to go. Absolutely, I agree. Thank you guys so much for your comments on the convo. Um, yes, Sogato, he wants to make vacant housing into free housing for those who needing it. Yes, yes. Because here's the thing, you get a lot of people who go, oh, we just need to build more sustainable housing for the homeless. And it's like, why are you building when we already have the housing stock? We already have it. What is the purpose of trying to build more? And then people want to give the money to the corporations in order to build it. Am I back? Did I I probably did. But yeah, so I mean, other than that, this was cut out. Yeah, I understand. Connection is a little bit slow, unfortunately. I don't know. Maybe they're throttling it. I don't know. Maybe. Eh. But at least we got through the interview, and I'm glad about that. And I was glad to be able to have Terrence on, for this interview as well. And I just want to thank everybody for their inclusion in on this as well. Uh, Thank you to Roger Meadows for your questions and your information in this on Rockfin. And I just want to say that, yeah, I want to get the cookies through the screen. But one of the things that I think that is important is, you know, we start uplifting people who are trying to get this done so that we can team up with them. So that those of us who are on the outside can work with people who are not part of the duopoly. Though at the same time, we have to keep pressure on them, you know. So that's easier said than done. But I think, like Savvy always says, an 80-20 approach, 80% direct action. So that's one of the primary components of this program, as well as people like RBN and others in the left media sphere. So uh, be sure to um, Yeah, and I understand, Michelle. You don't believe what you hear until it's actually done. You know, so of course, we have to do that, but at the same time, it's like we're trying to choose the right hammer while we're working out that muscle in order to drive, or we're trying to find a good nail to drive into the wall, so to speak. So you know yeah, definitely, Eric. I agree. So later this evening at 6 p.m., I'm going to be on RBN on the Savvy and JB show. Be sure to tune in to that. This one's going to be a fun one. We're going to be talking about some music again, but this one's going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be as the same vein as music videos, but yeah, I'm gonna get a little. I'm gonna be goofy. So just to let you guys know. So we're gonna have some fun. Also, just to let you guys know, I'm gonna be reading a little bit later this week. I'm gonna be continue the reading of Blood in My Eye by George Jackson. So if you guys want to, tune into that exclusively on Rockfin, then I will be also reading and continuing that, as well as reading Dirty Truths by Michael Parenti here on YouTube. So I will be doing that as well. And I hope you guys will be able to join in on that reading and being able to give me your thoughts in the comments as well. So I just want to thank every single person for being here and also asking these very important and informative questions. Thank you so much for being a part of this. If you guys can, please make sure to share this on all forms of social media, as well as people. If you guys know of people, family, and friends that live in Massachusetts, please make sure to share this, as well as plenty of people who are throughout the country who also want to support anybody that's running either third party or independence as well. And plus, he's running more of a state race, and for people who are state and local, I think that's where a lot of our power can really be had. So please make sure to share this there. Also, if you haven't liked the stream, why? I mean, don't y'all love me? I wore my I wore my shirt for you. I mean, I loved it. It's very comfy. I wanted to do more of you know the lumberjack type of style for y'all. You know, I mean, unless y'all looking at me to unbutton it, I'm saying, I was kidding. I'm not gonna do that here on stream. You guys got to go to an OnlyFans for that. I don't have an OnlyFans, so don't look for one. But yeah, so but yes, if you guys can, please make sure to like. If you guys have not subscribed, then I see you. I see you not subscribed. I know you live, and I'll come over, and I may have to convince you by baking you some mac and cheese. I may have to bring a couple puppies and kittens over to your house just to convince you. What do I got to do? What a brother got to do in order for y'all to subscribe? Hmm? What do I have to give you a back massage or what? What do I have to do? Or maybe I don't know, give y'all a bong or something? Just subscribe. But anyways, so I just want to thank all of you for joining. Make sure to water your plants and water yourselves. Leave the world better than you found it. And smoke them if you got them. What am I forgetting? Oh yeah, forehead kisses, mwah, to every single one of y'all. You are lovely. I love you. Yes, Yipper, milk and cookies. My mistakes bring all the boys to the yard. They're like, it's better than yours. Damn right, it's better than yours. I can teach you, but I have to charge. Yeah.